Well, I told you I would deliver the American League East Divisional Preview Podcast episode on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. That is happening right here, right now. You're watching it either live on Facebook, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, or on YouTube, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, inching closer and closer to the regular season. Opening day, the AL East 2022 divisional preview. As I stated, each day leading up to opening day, I will give you guys my divisional previews for each division in baseball. How do I see each division within Major League Baseball shaking out? Who will come out on top, according to me, winning the divisional titles? Any team that wins a divisional title in any sport is setting themselves apart from the rest of the pack. And of course, I had to do the AL East first and foremost because that is a division that I love to discuss, due in large part to the fact that, yes, my favorite team, the Boston Red Sox, reside in that division. The greatest rivalry in the history of sports resides in that division between the Red Sox and the New York Yankees, between both the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. Welcome to the show, everybody. Ryan Thomas here, back again, and let's get right to it. Let's not, delay this any further because Rob Manfred tried like hell to delay the season as much as humanly possible, and he came out on the losing end of that fiasco. So let's not delay this any longer. Let's just go right into it. Who do I believe will win the AL East this season? The American League East divisional breakdown starts right here, right now. And who do I have placing last place in the AL East? And I hate to be a bit of a jerk in saying this, but this should come as no surprise to anybody that I have the Baltimore Orioles as the fifth best team out of five. And I'll tell you, have no fear, Baltimore. I know these last few seasons have been very, very tough on Orioles fans. Namely, seeing Chris Davis get X amount of dollars and watching a player by the name of Manny Machado just, walk out of the front door and not getting the return from Machado that they should have, which set the club back many, many years. But look no further. The lack of success that the Orioles have had over the last few years have led to the Orioles bringing in players like Adley Rutschman, bringing in players like Chance Sisco. And Adley Rutschman is one of those players that is probably one of the top three prospects in the league right now. I don't anticipate that Adley Rutschman will start the season in the majors. He more likely than not will begin the season in AAA, maybe even AA. But due to his success in AA, I would assume that he would move to AAA to start the season for at least the first maybe 3-4 weeks. And then we could see the debut of one of the more highly anticipated call-ups in recent memory. You also add in the fact that Ryan Mountcastle was a fantastic player for the Baltimore Orioles this past season. So as bad as the Orioles were wins and losses wise, the Baltimore Orioles do have talent on their team. It's just a matter of time before that talent bubbles to the surface, the cream rises to the top, so to speak, and we start to see the Orioles make an impact. One player that I greatly admire in this whole game, whether it's the AL East, the American League, National League, or any of the National League divisions, just across baseball, is Cedric Mullins. And Cedric Mullins was an all-star last year. I expect that to carry over to this season as well. So it's not, the Orioles are not the best team. There's no doubt about it. They're the worst team in this division, and I think that'll stay the same. But I do expect them to win more games. I don't expect them to continuously be the worst team in baseball year in, year out over the next, 2-3 years like they have the last 2-3 years. I expect things to get better. How much better remains to be seen. Anthony Santander is another Oriole that'll have something to say in regards to that, as well as Trey Mancini, who is a player that I've always enjoyed watching, plays the game the right way, plays the game with just an all-out effort, the likes of which we rarely see. So the next team that I have in this division, and this is what is going to cause a lot of fans of this show that are Yankees fans, and there I gave it away, that are Yankees fans that will say that I'm just simply a Yankee hater. I look at sports in an unbiased way. I look at sports in terms of, I do like to throw some hate on the Yankees every now and then, but it's more so to get a reaction from their diehard fan base, from the fans that are somewhat living in a diluted state of reality, living in a state of delusion, I should say. The New York Yankees I see as the fourth best team in this division, and I'll tell you why. Over the course of this offseason, I expected the Yankees to do X, Y, and Z. And this offseason was very strange, as I mentioned from the top of the show, that this offseason was not really a regular offseason, due in large part to the fact that Rob Manfred really prohibited these teams from going out and getting their players in the similar form and fashion that they are accustomed to. The offseason wasn't as long as it normally is. It was a rapid offseason, free agency, the winter meetings, all those things didn't really take place as much this offseason as they have in years past, or for as long as they did in years past, this offseason, I should say. And the New York Yankees made one major move, and it was a trade. It wasn't a free agent signing. It was a trade. They traded Gary Sanchez, X, Y, and Z. But Gary Sanchez was the big name in the trade, to Minnesota in exchange for Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who is expected to man the shortstop position for the New York Yankees. And here's the thing. Josh Donaldson is in the back half of his career. The Yankees had to assume more money for Josh Donaldson than they did for, obviously, Kiner-Falefa, who was under club control. Kiner-Falefa was a great player for the Texas Rangers, really solid defensively. He's played catcher, he's played third, he's played short, he's played first. He's a great infielder as well as catcher. So good move by the Yankees to bring him in. But in order for Texas to trade away a player like that, the Yankees had to assume $20+ million for Josh Donaldson. And I've been a Josh Donaldson fan since his days back in Toronto, moving on to, his days in Oakland. Prior to that, I liked Josh Donaldson, but he's been around a long time. He's played for the A's. He played for the Blue Jays. He played for the Atlanta Braves and the Minnesota Twins. He's bounced around a lot. And I think his best days are behind him. When I look at this Yankees lineup, they're going to heavily rely upon players that are older. Anthony Rizzo, he's older. He's on the back end of his career. Aaron Hicks, we haven't seen anything from Aaron Hicks these last two seasons. Joey Gallo was a disaster in the portion in which he played for the Yankees last season. He was pitiful in terms of his batting average, his on-base percentage, AVG, OBP were very, very low. And I just think the Yankees lineup consists of boom or bust, all homers or all strikeouts. It's not a balanced lineup like you see throughout the rest of the division. I'll get to that a little bit later. But it's not a balanced team. And there's question marks within their starting rotation as well. The Baltimore Orioles have zero pitching. The New York Yankees have zero pitching, and Garrett Cole, as well as the return of a player that I think everybody should have their eye on, whether he makes that comeback or not, Luis Severino. If Severino can make an adamant, resounding comeback, that will dictate largely what happens with the Yankees. That number 2 starting pitcher is crucial to the success of the Yankees. And if Severino is lackluster, then the Yankees won't be anything. And I see them really struggling just based on how much stock they've put into a lineup featuring players that are far past their prime or entering that moment in their career where they are past their prime. So I'm not impressed with what the Yankees have done this offseason. They haven't had a typical barn burner of an offseason where they leave no stone unturned and go out and get X, Y, and Z to make their team better. They got a little bit better on paper, but all they really did was add old with old. And Brian Cashman, the Yankees general manager, I posted it today, he made a very weird comment in regards to he's frustrated and offended when people bring up the fact that they hadn't won the World Series since 2009. And they haven't. But he antiquated the drought, I guess, for the Yankees to the Astros cheating. And yeah, the Astros did cheat, and it's disgusting that they cheated. It's egregious that they cheated, and it's even more sickening that they weren't really punished for it. But I think that's a diluted sense of reality from Brian Cashman. That's a loser's mentality from Brian Cashman, the general manager of the New York Yankees, to come out and say that. I found that to be very weird, especially heading into a season where the Yankees need Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton healthy, ready, willing, and able. Those guys have to be healthy all season long. If the Yankees lose those guys, either one of them, dare I say even both of them at the same time, their season could go up in smoke. And I don't think the Yankees have the makings of a championship caliber team. Garrett Cole was shaky at best in his first year as the ace for the New York Yankees, and I don't think things will get better. The Tampa Bay Rays continue to impress me just based on how little money they spend and yet how competitive they remain. And one thing I'd like to look at with the Rays roster is that simple fact that you go down the roster and you don't recognize hardly anyone outside of older pitchers like Corey Kluber making their debut with the Rays this year. The relievers are relatively young, at least, or at most, I should say, 29, 30. I've noticed these last few years the Rays have made just solid additions to the team over the course of solid trades that worked out immensely for them. One being Chris Archer being dealt from Tampa Bay to Pittsburgh a few years ago. We meaning Tampa Bay, we saw them acquire Austin Meadows, who was a great player. He fits in to Tampa Bay very, very well. Kevin Kiermaier is a great player as well on that team, and a guy that I think deserves no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. I think he's the game's next big thing as far as a phenom, and that is Wander Franco. As soon as Wander Franco was called up, I was at an Italian restaurant with my dad and my brother. I slid my phone out of my pocket. I typically don't like to have my phone on me during a nice dinner. Slid my phone out of my pocket, and I thought, maybe let's add Wander Franco to the fantasy team. And I'm very thankful I did. It's a dynasty league, dynasty keeper league, so I'm able to keep him for the next, 4 or 5 seasons. And Wander Franco got paid. Not only did he get paid, but he got paid by a team that rarely pays anybody. So Wander Franco is somebody that I think is going to have a great season this year, adding in the pitching depth that the Rays have, that the Yankees don't, that the Orioles certainly don't. I can honestly make an argument that the Rays could finish second in the AL East this year, with the team that I have second finishing third and swapping spots. I could honestly make that argument, and I think it'd be a fair argument. But the reason I have the Rays third is that they don't have the depth in the hitting lineup that the top 2 teams in this division do. And the next best team, the second best team, I think, in the American League East is not the Toronto Blue Jays. Yeah, shockingly enough, I'm picking my Boston Red Sox to finish second in the AL East. You can fill in the blanks as far as who I believe will finish first in the AL East. I won't go there just yet with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to make that, obviously, the end of this show. I got to dive deep into my team, the Boston Red Sox. Why do I believe that the Boston Red Sox will finish second in the AL East rather than first? 1, I'm not biased. 2, I'm a realist. And 3, it's just fact that the Boston Red Sox have very little pitching depth, whether it's their bullpen or their starting rotation. But it's a true fact that the Boston Red Sox not only had arguably the best lineup in the American League with or without Mookie Betts, but that lineup got that much better and then some with the addition of Trevor Story. Long gone are the days where you have a massive hole in the field at second base, because Trevor Story is playing second base for the Boston Red Sox with Xander Bogaerts lining up at short. Xander Bogaerts has an opt-out after this season. He could leave the Red Sox. Maybe, maybe not. That's something to keep our eye out on towards the end of the year, whether that happens. But truthfully, I feel that the Boston Red Sox have one of, if not the best, batting lineup in the American League. Between Bogaerts, between Devers, JD Martinez, Alexander Verdugo, who made his impact post the Mookie Betts trade, as well as now Trevor Story. I greatly enjoy the Red Sox lineup and how it's constructed by the best manager in the division, in my opinion, Alex Cora, who proved just how valuable he is to this team post his suspension, coming back from his suspension and leading the Red Sox to another ALCS series last year. So, second in the AL East, I think is good enough for an AL wildcard spot. That's where I see the Boston Red Sox. I also have to throw in the simple fact that Chris Sale will miss his third straight opening day start for the Boston Red Sox. It's not good for Red Sox fans. It's not good for fantasy owners of Chris Sale. It's not good for the early portion of this season, but I say this every year. It's a long, long season. Maybe the Boston Red Sox are a top contender to be active at the trade deadline, late June, July. I can't remember which one it is, but that would leave the Toronto Blue Jays as the number one team, in my opinion, in the American League East. And look, I've seen this rise to prominence firsthand. The affiliate, AAA affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays is none other than the Buffalo Bisons. And we have seen some great players come through Buffalo through the Toronto Blue Jays farm system, and those guys are now members of the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's not just the obvious, the big three, whether it's Vlad Jr., whether it's Bo Bichette, or Kevin Biggio. Teoscar Hernandez is a name that broke out last season for the Toronto Blue Jays. You add in the fact that Toronto didn't even have a fully healthy George Springer throughout the majority of the season last year, and yet Toronto was still a force to be reckoned with. They barely missed out on the playoffs. I think that, truthfully, Toronto will be back better than ever because they did make moves to their pitching staff. And this is something that I want to go over. The question mark is Toronto's rotation. But they've made moves. And this rotation, I look at it and I say that this rotation should be far better with a full season behind it than what it was with half a season behind it. What I mean by that is twofold. Jose Barrios was acquired in a trade between the Minnesota Twins and the Toronto Blue Jays. He played half the season for Toronto. Now that he's got a full season ahead of him under his belt, as well as an extension with the Blue Jays, I expect him to have a good year. Kevin Gausman has been one of those pitchers that has been very underrated as well over the course of his career. Hyun-Jin Ryu is the ace of this staff, and I thought he had moments where he showed those flashes of brilliance that he pitched with in LA as a Dodger. And last and certainly not least, Yusei Kikuchi brought in as well from the Seattle Mariners to pitch for the Toronto Blue Jays. I like this rotation. There are guys that have firepower. There are guys that have breaking ball repertoire, I should say, in their pitchability, and I do believe that the bullpen is far better than what it is given credit for as well. Nate Pearson is a name to keep your eyes out on. Nate Pearson was a starter in Buffalo, got called up to Toronto, expected to be a starter. Didn't really quite work out that way, but they regulated him to closer duty. This guy throws extremely, extremely hard, but I know one thing's for certain. Jordan Romano is more likely than not the closer for the Toronto Blue Jays, but Nate Pearson might be a dominant setup man for the Toronto Blue Jays. Vlad Jr., what can you say about Vlad Jr. that hasn't been said outside of the fact that I will fully acknowledge that over the first few years of Vlad Jr.'s career, it wasn't in the best of shape. But if you go on Instagram, this man has dropped some pounds. Vlad Jr., Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Kevin Biggio, Matt Chapman, the newest addition to the Toronto Blue Jays. Not only should this team be potent on offense, but potent on defense, with Matt Chapman manning the hot corner for the Toronto Blue Jays. Bo Bichette, one of the better fielding shortstops in the game, one of the best extra base hitters that the game has. He's proven that in his young career. And yes, the Toronto Blue Jays also acquired some speed, sending away Randall Grichuk to the Colorado Rockies in exchange for Ramil Tapia. I really like the way this team was constructed. They have speed, they have power, they have defense, and they have pitching. The pitching is the biggest question. Do they have as much depth in their pitching as they should? In comparison to the other four teams, I think they do. I think they have better depth than Boston in the pitching department, better depth than the Rays, better depth than the Yankees, and better depth, certainly, and the Baltimore Orioles. I'm Ryan Thomas. That is the American League East divisional preview episode of the show. I got the Toronto Blue Jays not only winning the AL East, but as this show and series progress, I will come out and say it right here, right now. I think the Toronto Blue Jays will represent the American League in the 2022 Fall Classic. And who I have representing the NL, you got to wait to see it. But at the very worst, Toronto belongs in the ALCS with the roster that they have. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the 2022 American League East divisional preview and prediction episode of the show. Subscribe on YouTube for more. Like on Facebook and follow along on all audio podcasting platforms. Take care.